Hi guys, welcome to Blue Music and Movies, the podcast where we review music and movies. Apparently not on schedule since I haven't been reviewing them on the allotted days. Now, today I'm here with a friend of mine who's going to be helping me review this album, everyone. Say hi to Elizabeth.
Hi everyone.
Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to listen together to the album Leak 0413 by J. Paul. And I have listened to this album, I would say, about 5 or 6 times in the past several days. I saw a lot of people talking about it. A lot of people were giving it just amazing reviews, saying it was the best album of the year. And we're only halfway through the year. So I decided I was going to check it out. And so I listened to it and I love it. But what I want to do is, before I give you guys my honest opinion, I want to go ahead and listen to it with my best friend here, and we are going to give you 2 opinions. Now, if she doesn't agree with me, then she's going to give you guys her honest opinion. Maybe she'll hate it. We don't know. All right, so we are going to go ahead and listen to it together and then tell you what we think.
All right, I'm ready. I haven't done this before. I'm excited to join in.
All right, so we just finished listening to the album. So, what were your initial thoughts on the album?
I guess my initial thoughts was that it displayed a good range of musical styles within the genre of electronic R&B. I really liked it.
He definitely managed to bring a lot of different things together. Like there was like sort of more intellectual dance music, and then there was stuff like just simple pop music, and there was R&B, there was funk. Like I noticed a funk bass line in one song, which I thought was really cool. And then he had that really crazy production, which I know it's just demos, but it's obvious that from the get-go, he was trying to make it sound very, like, retro, and sort of like, this is what it sounded like to me. It sounded like if you took a record that had been very badly damaged, or a cassette tape, and it had late 80s, early 90s R&B hits on it, and basically, like, radio hits, and the cassette tape was so degraded that it was very messed up, and you put it in your radio and listen to it. It's just like, it's such an experience, and I thought it was really cool. Now, the first song was called One of the Brethrens. That one was just a small introduction track, but it was helpful because it told us how to pronounce the guy's name. So it's J. Paul, not J. Paul. I originally thought it was J. Paul, but it's J. Paul, so I mean, there isn't really anything to say about that one. I don't know what Brethrens means. Do you have any idea?
I'm really not sure. I just know that song started with tribal beats, kind of, and then it was basically just like a quick transition to the next song. It was really only a few seconds.
Yeah, and that next song was really good. It's called Straight Outta Mumbai. This one had a tribal beat as well. I think it continued from the first one.
Did.
Yeah. And it was basically a tribal beat underneath glitch R&B instrumentals. And for me, it brought a sort of nostalgic and wistful vibe.
I heard some structured chaos with different beats overlaying on top of each other, and changing beats pretty often. It all flowed really well together. I definitely see the nostalgic vibe in it too.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really cool, is what he managed to do in this album was he managed to sort of, it was very chaotic but cohesive at the same time, which is like probably very, very hard to do, I would imagine. The production, it really reminds me of like the hyper futuristic but still throwback style of vaporwave music, which it's different, but at the same time it has like the same ethos to it. It sort of like takes this older music and then it gives us a modern take on it, but it's very nostalgic because although it's updated and you bring modern techniques into it, he added other techniques and flourishes that would make it sound nostalgic, like crackling or skipping little glitch techniques. I thought it was super cool. It was, I mean, it really reminded me of the throwback style of Clarence Clarity, and he's another artist who does this sort of R&B throwback stuff, and he is so good. The first thing it reminded me of, and I love Clarence Clarity.
Sure. And so the next track was called Zion Wolf Theme. I didn't have a whole lot to say about this, but it was smooth electronic. It was a bit deep and dark. It was darker than the last few songs that had more of kind of an upbeat sound. This one was a little bit darker. It felt more emotional to me.
Yeah, I think what I wrote down here was it was sad, but you can dance to it. So, but I also think that it was sort of down-tempo. A lot of the songs on here are down-tempo. The next one was a creepy off-kilter instrumental called Garden of Paradise, and I don't really have anything else written about that one, do you?
I really like this one, actually. It was kind of like an electro instrumental. It had computerized dinging. It was nostalgic to me in the way that it reminded me of an N64 or an 8-bit game. It sounded kind of like something that you'd hear in one of the older Legend of Zelda games from the N64.
That's really cool, and I never would have known that because I've never done that. But I've read that like a lot of producers that take from the whole vaporwave thing, they put things like video game sounds in it because it's very retro and nostalgic. So I'm glad that you noticed that because I never would have noticed that. The next one is called Genevieve, and this one actually had a similar instrumental to the very second song, Straight Outta Mumbai. It was a bit of an 80s throwback and faster than some of the earlier songs. Constantly throughout the album, I get the feeling that this guy took fully formed pop songs and he used glitch and cut and paste techniques to just make the whole thing something that surpasses a mere pop album.
Yeah, this one, it was very upbeat and dancey. It was kind of a mix between a lonely night, but then also going out to a club. It kind of reminded me of going out to try to get your mind off of someone, trying to move on with your life, but there's their memories still lingering in the background. The lyrics were not quite cohesive with the music. The lyrics, he was talking about missing someone, but then the beats were more upbeat.
Yeah. That's really good. I forgot, but you're right. The lyrics were kind of like... I think I remember that now. I've listened to this album several times, but... honestly, I can't tell you from memory what any of it's about.
I'm definitely more of a lyric person, I feel like, and I think you're more of a music person.
I think that's definitely true, yeah. A lot of the times, I don't even, register what they're saying. And then there was, the sixth one was a creepy little spoken word interlude about eating human flesh. I don't know what it was called. I think maybe it was called,
Raw Beat.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, it had a beat in the background, too, at the end.
Yep, it was pretty short. It was just a little anecdote about eating
about eating human flesh.
The next one was kind of a cover of the 90s song Crush by Jennifer Page. It was called Crush. He didn't say all of the lyrics from the song, but he used a lot of portions of the lyrics from the song. It had kind of an almost erotic, slow electronic beat, and it got a little bit jazzy at the end.
That's interesting. I had no idea this was a cover because I thought it was reminiscent of Michael Jackson, which a lot of the songs on this album reminded me of him, but I wrote that for this one specifically. He kind of had a similar, Michael Jackson in some of his, especially Dangerous and the next album, he had a lot of, angry, fast, but sad songs, and so I feel like that's why a lot of these remind me of it, because they're fast and sad at the same time. They're upbeat and sad. Yeah, and I said this whole album has kind of a nostalgic and a wistful vibe.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's got the nostalgic and wistfulness, and then layered with the upbeat. So it's kind of a duality there.
Definitely. Good Time, the 8th track, was another interlude. It was a small dance thing. And I think that some of these, maybe they were not meant to be interludes because a lot of these were unfinished tracks that were leaked. And after this album was leaked in 2013, J. Paul apparently left the music business. He didn't do anything for 5 or 6 years because he was very upset that this happened and that people heard his tracks that he didn't feel were finished and that he did not want to be shown to the world, which I definitely understand where he's coming from. Because if you do part of a song and then people hear and it's not the whole thing, you're really upset because you feel like people heard it and they didn't hear what you wanted them to hear. So Definitely makes sense to me, and I feel like maybe some of these were supposed to be finished, but they just never were. So I'm very excited to see what he puts out in the future. He put out a single this year. When he did that, it had 2 different songs on it. One of them was called, I don't remember, actually. I think one of them was called He, and the other one was called something about love. I don't remember. They were really good, though.
It says, "Do you love her now?" and He.
He reminded me of Michael Jackson, once again. It was really good, but we didn't listen to that one. In fact, I only listened to them one time, but I really remember liking them. The 9th track is Jasmine, and this one was another wistful song. It was another R&B tune, and I think that Jai Paul's voice was very emotive in this song. It was, in this song especially, throughout the album, but in this song especially, it was very emotional. And it had like a funk bass guitar in it as well.
I thought it was a deep song with melodic beats, and the beat was the main focus of the song, with the lyrics as an undertone, which seemed like a quiet expression of feeling and longing. The beat was very on point, and it really channeled the emotions of the song.
The next song, what was it called? 100,000. This one was a tiny bit different than some of the other songs. It was a little more aggressive. It had an amazing melody. It was very catchy.
Yeah, it gave me a feeling like I was flying or floating in space, kind of. It was very, very catchy. It went back and forth between the melody or the lyrics' focus.
It was very upbeat, too, unlike some of the others. Mm-hmm. Well, it was kind of upbeat. It wasn't like... I mean, this whole album sort of is a little bit down-tempo. Mm-hmm. But it definitely had its more upbeat and then its more low-key songs. Track 11 is called Vibin'. This one was another down-tempo track. What I have written down here is that I did not feel that there was a single bad track on this album. Some of them were just interludes, but I really enjoyed every single song on this album. I really did, up to this point and afterwards. I did write down that several other times that I've listened to this album, I did skip through the interludes, and I don't love the instrumental like you did.
This particular one, it gave me the vibin', it gave me some reggae undertones. The music was a bit choppy, fading in and out. I liked the instrumentals, and I liked all the tracks on this one as well, even the very short ones. I mean, some were just 20 or 30 seconds, so it was interesting, but even those were good.
Definitely agree.
Right, and then the next track is called Baby Beat. It was another very short track. I guess the main thing I have to say about it was it reminded me a lot of Nujabes style, which is an artist. He did a lot of music for the anime Samurai Champloo, and that's really all I have to say. This was a pretty short track.
Yeah, the only thing I have is that it had sort of like indie-tronica type Fortet. Some of the instrumentals reminded me of Fortet. The next track is called Desert River. This one also had another reprise of the synths, which I just noticed this only this time listening, but it had similar synths on track 13, on track 2, and track 5. So it was almost like they were all parts of the same song, but then they had different melodies and stuff, but they had almost the exact same synth in them. The one that was like... Yeah, they had that on 3 songs. This one might be my favorite song on the album. Really love it. It was very emotional. There was tons of glitchy production in this one, even more than in some of the others. It had like whip sounds. It had a lot of bleeps and bloops. It was really cool.
It was very dreamlike and intense, upbeat, and changing pace throughout from faster to slower. It kind of made me feel like it was a fever dream.
That's a really cool comparison. I love that. Track 14, Chicks. It had soulful singing over indie-tronica dance beats, and the synths simulated strings. Wow, that was hard to say. The synths simulated strings. No, but the synthesizers, they managed to get a sound out of them that almost sounded like you were playing like violin or something. It sounded really cool.
Yeah, that was a really simple, chill song.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I liked almost everything on this album, like I said. This was a really good album. I really enjoyed this album. Track 15, All Night. This one had relaxing, funky synths. It was one of the more slow songs, and it almost sounded like just like a like many of the songs, it was like a radio-friendly tune that somehow got overtaken by crazy lo-fi production, and it was really awesome.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite tracks, too. This one was very meaningful and emotional to me. I love the chill beat overlain by some almost trombone or jazzy-sounding melodies. It was a really good one.
And then the very last track was called BTSTU. This one had a background of a chorus of singers that was soon drowned out by a heavy electro beat during the chorus, but it came back during the verses. I feel like this one was a great note to end on. They were, just like the other one, there was lots of futuristic noises, bleeps and bloops, the really cool production, and I just felt like this whole album had a very cohesive theme, which kept it all together, despite being very chaotic, like you said.
I agree about the last track. I thought almost the exact same thing. It started out with some gospel-sounding ooze, but quickly rolled to a more confrontational-sounding beat, and goes back and forth with this a bit. This track had a lot of beat dropping, and the entire album, it was very cohesive, despite having a range of melodies and some distortion throughout the tracks, and some very interesting transitions between tracks as well.
Definitely. And, okay, so what are your final thoughts? In my opinion, I guess the rating, what is the rating that you give this album? I am going to go ahead and say that for me, this album would be I think it's going to be a 10 out of 10. I love it. I just love it. I think it was one of the best releases of 2019, despite actually having been released in 2013.
I think it was really good. I'm definitely not much of a music reviewer.
You did better than me, so.
I would give it at least a 9. It was really good. I haven't listened to much recent music that's exactly similar to this style, but this is definitely a style that I really enjoy. It was very good, very well put together, and despite it having been, some tracks still seem unfinished, it still is just really amazing.
Yeah, I feel like you're more of a fan of R&B than I am, but I've listened to more like vaporwave and that type of stuff. So I feel like this was a really good album for us both to review because it had styles that we both really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And I just think that this album was it was really cool because it was futuristic, yet it was retro at the same time, which is just like some of the very best music of this day and age, because a lot of the music that we have nowadays, the very best stuff, it's retro. It's a throwback to the 80s and the 90s, but using a very futuristic sound. That's why I really like PC music, and I love all of the things that managed to grow out of vaporwave and future funk. And I think that this was a really awesome sound, and I think that especially for 2013, it's just absolutely crazy ahead of its time. Like, I can't believe that this was made back in before 2013. I mean, the very last track on this album, BTSTU, that was actually released in 2009, wow. Which is absolutely insane because I have not heard anything like that in 2009. This is a sound that's only starting to become popular on the internet right now, and this was released 10 years before now. Like, it's crazy. It was very, very ahead of its time, and I just think that this was an absolutely great album. All right, guys. Well, that is our final opinion on this album. And so if you haven't heard this album, you should definitely go ahead and listen to it as fast as you can. It can be somewhat confusing, but I think overall it's just really good. And once you get used to the production techniques, you're going to love it. I felt like this was a great note to end on. Okay, that was the end of the sentence.